An expert on global supply chains and logistics. John Manners-Bell, welcome. Thank you for joining us here at GB News.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Nigel.
So, you guys have been warning government, I believe, for some time that there was a major problem coming down the tracks.
Absolutely. For probably about 15 years, we've been seeing that there's been a driver shortage. And not just in the UK, this is a global problem. And in Europe, we're seeing that there are at least 400,000 drivers short. So, we've been caught up in it, but it's certainly a European-wide problem, to say the very least.
And is this because, as I suspect, there's been a race to the bottom in terms of pay and conditions for HGV drivers that's just simply made it an unattractive job to do?
Yeah, that's exactly what has happened over the years. You know, from being a job with high esteem, as it certainly was maybe 30, 40 years ago, you know, now over the years it's been eroded. The pay and conditions have got worse. And the esteem that the drivers have been held in has also gone down. And what's happened over the last few years, as UK nationals have gone out of the industry, they've become old, they've retired, they've been replaced not by younger people coming through, but the industry has looked to cheaper replacements from particularly from Eastern Europe over the last 15 years or so. And of course, those people have been very willing to work for much lower wages than the UK equivalents.
Yes, but now, in this crisis, which we haven't done much about until it's come upon us, appealing for drivers to volunteer from Europe, and the Prime Minister today are forced to admit that in the first week of this opening up of this scheme, only 127 drivers have applied. So there isn't much salvation coming from that quarter. I saw the Army boys out in Kent, and it was great to see them. But of course, only a couple of hundred of Army drivers have been put in. Isn't the problem, John, isn't the problem at the DVLA? Isn't that at the heart of what needs to be done to solve this crisis?
There are many different factors behind the driver shortage, and that is one of them, absolutely. During the COVID crisis, there were no HGV tests being conducted, and so consequently we've lost thousands of new drivers. We've stopped them from entering the industry. So yes, that will have to be streamlined as we move forward.
And tell me, do you think the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, has a grip on this situation and will make sure people get turkeys for Christmas?
There are some things which government can do. There are some things that government can't do. I think Boris alluded to it in your previous. It's not the government to fix all these problems. The industry has got to look very, very closely at itself, not just the road haulage operators who've been willing to use very, very cheap labour, but also the manufacturers and retailers who have been pushing them down on price. It's a market issue which will have to be fixed. But there are some things which the government can do. And that is, for example, encourage more people into the industry by paying for much of their training. It costs about £5,000, up to £5,000 to get an HGV license. You see at the moment thousands of young people going to university to do degrees which may or may not be useful. They ought to bring back, in my view, more funding for vocations such as lorry drivers, for example. They need to build more truck stops. Part of the reason why only 1% of the driving community are women is because of the dreadful conditions in terms of hygiene and security that truck drivers have to endure. So there are many things which the government can do if they are going to help fix the crisis. But it's down to industry.
And they've been living like this and earning 11 quid an hour and stuck with a series of European regulations that make them sleep on roadsides. John, I think we've all, over the last couple of weeks come to understand that this is a group of people that have been severely undervalued, great responsibility, considerable risk, and I want you, please, to promise you will keep the pressure on the government to once again make this a respectable, well-paid profession. So I'm sure you will, won't you?
Absolutely. Thank you, Nigel.